So I took a trip to Seattle, Washington, and Portland, Oregon. Now, these clips that I'm going to be showing are from my trip, obviously. Now, it's a very long drive from Phoenix, Arizona, all the way to Seattle, which is pretty much on the Canadian border. And the weather climate is probably the most opposite that you could possibly think of. Phoenix, sunny, dry, hot. Seattle, cold, rainy or cloudy, and humid because it's near the water, not the desert. So I decided to drive 1,500 miles up there. And well, here's my little journey where I went through California, then visited my mom who lives on the coast in Oregon, and kind of went through Portland. I also stopped by and went snowboarding at Mount Hood, which is a really great place, especially Timberline Lodge. And then up to Seattle, which just, I want to move there now because it's just really hard to describe, but it just seems like my type of city. It's the middle of April and the weekly temperature has been 98 to 100 degrees, which sucks because you don't want to go outside. The UV index has been around 9, and 9 out of the maximum is about like 10, but it can go up to like 11 or 12 for extreme danger. So pretty much if you're in Phoenix in the spring, you have to wear sunscreen, shades, hat. It's hot, it's dry. My skin is already just drying up and dying. My nostrils are seizing up. Like, it just felt so good to be with that nice cool 50 something to 60 something degrees weather on the water with some nice West Coast humidity up in Seattle and the Portland area, just that whole area. I mean, yeah, it's a little wetter, but I kind of like that. Rain is relaxing, and it doesn't rain very much in Arizona, sorry. So without any further ado, here is some clips from when I went up the West Coast and checked out Seattle, and then came back through California and actually stopped by Yosemite National Park. So personally, Yosemite was kind of overrated. Like, it was just a madhouse and insanely crowded, especially on a Saturday. Do not go to Yosemite on a weekend, especially around the summer I'm at the spring, when it could be spring break. I'm sure the summer is really bad, but yeah, and then the drive is a complete nightmare. There were some pretty parts, you know. I'd like to check it out another time, maybe in like a really peak off season where I have more time and, you know, maybe actually experience the sunset or even camp there. But just driving through and checking it out, not worth the hassle to get there. So here's the video clips and my typical little voiceover narration thing that I like to do. So thanks for watching, and subscribe, and I'll have more travel videos and hopefully some more goofy videos and other just random stuff. I mean, the channel is called Taylor Equals Random. Thank you. So this was Lake Shasta in Redding, California, that area. So big difference between what I'm used to in Arizona. So, I mean, obviously pretty intrigued by this, and you can even see some snow on the tip of the mountains in the background with fog. And the temperature was just beyond perfect. And then after that, we kind of decided to pull over and check out some of the views. But this is downtown Redding. Not downtown, but going through. And then this was one of the rivers in Redding when I decided to stop by the skate park and check it out. But the water was pretty much super crystal clear. And then this was Lake Shasta, and you can see a volcano in the background. I forgot the name of it, but it started with an L. But everything was pretty green, very calm. No parties or loudness or other types of crazy stuff going on at the lake. So may have to check it out in the future again sometime. But this was just off of an interstate exit off the side of the road, and found these great views. Need a better camera for the future so I can actually capture stuff in the distance. But here's Mount Shasta when we went up to the crags. This was using one of the binocular telescope things. You can see it there in the background from the top of the hiking trail, and me trying to adjust the phone to get a good angle of this thing. But you can just see how massive this mountain is and all of the trees and other crazy stuff going on. Apparently there's a ski resort at Mount Shasta. May have to check it out again. But there's the Castle Crags. Sometimes they have snow on them. Just random other snowy mountains in the background, which is pretty crazy in the spring. But it was a really good view. Sometimes there's snow on the crags and there's sometimes fog, but wasn't able to see and experience that. But here was the hiking trail, and it was a pretty steep drop off where you could see some of the damage. And this was actually at a rest area on the way between Oregon and California. So you could see Mount Shasta, and there it is again, and it was just so much more massive in person, and you couldn't even see the top half because it was above the clouds. And then right when we got to Oregon, this was the first pictures from the coast on the beach. But this was in Depot Bay, and you can see this little fella just hanging out. He was so cute. And this thing is called the Devil's Punch Bowl. It's between Depot Bay and Newport, Oregon. Very windy, very rainy on the Oregon coast, so you may need to bring some rain gear or something like that. And then this was just an insane view from the top of one of the scenic lookouts. And then here was the harbor area in Newport, Oregon. Again, very windy, wet, cloudy, typical Oregon stuff. And then boom, you could see this seal or sea lion hopping around. And this was at a seafood place. Very, very fresh calamari, fresh seafood. Pretty nice inside. View of the ocean right there. And then there's that little pup again, just hanging out, and you can see his other little friend kind of with him. And this was walking along the beach at Pacific Beach, so it has this big giant iconic rock just sticking out of nowhere. Pretty interesting. And there's some surfers. I don't know how they were surfing. Must be amazing wetsuits because it was very cold. And this was on one of the hiking trails coming back from Tillamook, and it was very, very, very green, kind of mossy, tropical, very interesting. Again, something I'm not used to in Arizona because it's normally a desert. But here's some more views. The waves are pretty aggressive on the Oregon coast, and lots of cliffs and splashing and wind. It's very interesting, the violence, but some people have been swept away and killed, so not really safe. Here you can obviously see how windy and wet it is. And this guy's just walking around, this Canadian goose, and he decides to try to take flight and get out of there. Yeah, I get soaked right here with the winds just spraying you. And then this is in Depot Bay at one of the crazy things. It's like this water spout just sprays stuff up. I think it's gonna happen. Yeah, it was just a little bit that sprayed there. But it's a big tourist thing in Depot Bay where people watch it. And then this was just walking along the coast between Newport and Depot Bay. And you just got these random structures. And the tide, I guess, was pretty low. But you have this weird thing that's like, I don't know, along the coast. It's very interesting, and you can see the lighthouse in the background over there, but it's definitely not like Florida beaches like I'm used to, or the beaches in Mexico. or Australia. But this was outside of Portland when I was getting ready to go to Timberline to snowboard. But you can see it's actually a slight double rainbow if you look closely. But I've never seen like a full rainbow like that. It was kind of bizarre seeing that in the sky. Normally you see like half of it or you never see the end. This was the famous double waterfall that is massive, the biggest one in Oregon. I guess in terms of water flowing, because there were some on higher cliffs that were falling, but this one you will get wet. Very big tourist trap, obviously, but you just walk up, and apparently you can go on the bridge at other times, but I guess it was too wet or windy, something to do with the weather. But it's definitely worth checking out. Yeah, but here's the top of Timberline on Mount Hood, which is a volcano outside of Portland. And it's the first time that I went to like an actual ski resort famous place that was not Flagstaff, Arizona. So this is like where the pros actually go. And you had insane views from the top. You could actually see other volcanoes in the background. But this was just kind of down right outside the lodge where everybody's just strapping up and going. And this is actually famous. It was actually the entrance in the movie The Shining with Jack Nicholson. The tallest lift was closed, but this was the view from up here. And you could just see as far as the eye can see, pretty much. But it was very fun. It was a little bit warm. But it's the first time skating on like a massive volcano. But here's me just going through this really pretty shaded snowboard area. But yeah, I did not have a GoPro, so I was trying to use my phone to record, and I hit a little bump, and I didn't think it would kind of toss me that high, but I got stuck on a freaking lift because parents like to put their little kids on these blue and black slopes, which is stupid. And then this was leaving the resort. I only got like about 2 hours in there, but here is a view from there. And then here's my first views from Seattle. Totally awesome and beautiful at night. Definitely one of the nicer skylines that I've seen because they actually put the buildings together, and then you can see a mount, I think it's pronounced Rainier, in the background. Rainier, whatever, something like that. But you can see flowers blossoming downtown Seattle. Sadly, the Space Needle is under construction, so you can't see downtown from the top of the needle. But that volcano is massive, and it's really far in the distance. And here's just a few little DSLR photos I got from that night. Definitely a good view from Cary Park. Just some seafood down there at the harbor, a bunch of fresh stuff. And this was the original Starbucks, the very first one ever. They even have the really old logo. Line out the door because, you know, tourist trap. So I went to Hard Rock, and then leaving Seattle, started heading back home to Arizona and stopped by the Redwoods and had to see them. And then on the coast near Brookings, Oregon, went to this very interesting place that's called a natural bridge. And I was going to try to climb up it and take photos, but it was just way too windy, waves were massive, way too slippery. And yeah, it was pretty much a death drop if you fell. Because, I mean, these are the type of waves that you will see in Oregon. Very crazy. Just massive. And then these are some of my DSLR footage, so sometimes it gets out of sync with the timeline. And yeah, so sorry about that, but here's a photo of that natural bridge. Couldn't hike on it because I didn't want to risk my life. Maybe if I came from the right side, don't know, but definitely worth checking out on the Oregon coast. And then this was that waterfall near that rainforest type tropical area where I was hiking south of Tillamook. And obviously it's not as big as the other big one, but nobody was there. And here we go, more clips of the crags. And Mount Shasta. Gonna have to go back again. Hopefully when I actually buy my own snowboard. But here we go again with more massive waves and just a sunset. Very windy, very cold, very wet. That's the Oregon coast for you, but it's interesting and quite thrilling. And here's just some video footage from my DSLR of downtown Seattle. It's really, really pretty when you're driving past it on the highway. But you can see there's just so much construction because the city is growing and it's just getting bigger and bigger. And there's the volcano mountain. And the thing that's cool about parts of Oregon is it always has this fog. I thought it was just the first time that I went in January that it had it, but nope, even in April. There's always this cool layer of fog that just surrounds the mountains, which I really enjoy, and plus you don't have to wear sunglasses all the time like when you're in Arizona. So you're safe from the sun. But this tree was a fallen redwood, and it shows the survival and how multiple trees started growing up out of the same tree. Because the redwoods are like a mind of their own, and yeah. But here's a really thick tree these people are taking pictures with. And these are multiple trees that like was trying to call itself Cathedral Tree. And people get married here because it's just a bunch of trees that kind of got all stuck together. And finally to Yosemite. Half Dome, Yosemite Falls. Just couldn't even get close to some of the attractions because there are just so many tourists. And this was the Bridal Falls. But it's a pretty drive. Make sure you have gas before you start. Endless cars just to get around the park. It's definitely a crazy trap, so don't go on weekends or else you'll be stuck like this just trying to exit the park. But it's still pretty. The bottom of Yosemite Valley is massive. And then when I was leaving, I got this cool view. Then leaving California, this was between Eugene and Redding, just a random rest stop, and just crazy mountains and green. Definitely a beautiful state. And right up here, we have my famous DSLR photo section. So stick around and you can see photos from the Oregon coast and Yosemite. Not Yosemite, but the Devil's Punch Bowl and the Castle Crags and a lighthouse and a few other things around Oregon and Mount Hood. So check it out.